Uh-oh, it's spooky outside. Unless you're watching this some other vague time that's not in October, when this video is, hopefully coming out. It'd be pretty weird if it came out in November, right? Anyways, this is something a little different than what I've done in the past. And to be honest, it was actually between this, the next video that should be coming out in like the next week or two, and a full retrospective of every Scooby-Doo series. But I thought this video would be a bit more time effective and probably more fun to do. You know what? If you can get me to 100,000 by the end of the year, I'll make sure the Scooby-Doo retrospective happens. Anyways, 10K Bill here, your 78th favorite YouTuber and your best friend. Today, I wanted to look at some episodes that are or were banned or not aired or released in some way, shape, or form. And specifically, I wanted the whole deal to be spooky because Halloween. So I know that there's a lot of lost episodes that are really just creepypastas, and there's no episode that was actually made. All of the episodes I'm talking about today do actually exist in some way, shape, or form. And if you're brave enough, you can check them out afterwards. The Scooby-Doo Project. Well, it looks like I'm kind of cheating my way into still talking about Scooby-Doo. At least a little. And this is something I actually remember watching when I was younger. Like, doing the research for this video actually unlocked some kind of core memory for me that I had apparently suppressed. First, let's dive into Scooby-Doo history in canon. Scooby-Doo had been airing pretty consistently since the series first aired. There were a couple gaps here and there where we weren't graced with anything new in this Scoobyverse. But the gap was usually only a year or two, if that. But following the end of the prequel series, A Pup Named Scooby-Doo, the series wouldn't air any new episodes for 11 years. Unless, of course, you count the Johnny Bravo crossover event in 1997. And you know that I do. But that was just one episode. And then, following the clear success of appearing in a Johnny Bravo episode, Scooby-Doo would be revived with the 1998 release of a direct-to-VHS film, Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. The movie took the series into a new direction, something that made a lot of sense for the series, an actually kind of scary movie and plot. The monsters aren't failing business owners, they're actual monsters who want to murder the entirety of the gang. This was a far more adult Scooby-Doo than we were used to seeing. And this new, and to be completely honest, brave direction really played a huge part in revitalizing the series. That's where this weird special episode slash series slash whatever you might want to call it comes in. But before we get into that, we need to take a slight tangent to give the whole thing just a smidge more context. Let's now talk about the 1999 absolute monster of a hit and horror classic, The Blair Witch Project. The Blair Witch Project is a found footage film that claims to be following the final hours of a few missing documentarians. While this film definitely didn't create the cinematic technique of found footage, it's probably done more for this style of filmmaking than any other movie. It led to other films like Paranormal Activity and Cloverfield. And what's really interesting with this movie is the incredibly forward-thinking way that it was promoted. First, it was really the first movie to be widely marketed on the internet. It was the Wild West of marketing back then. But what's also interesting is that there were definitely people who actually thought this was real. The film's marketing campaign was definitely designed to convince as many people as possible, if even just for a moment, that this was real. It wasn't just a movie, it was an occurrence. The families of the actors had people they knew reaching out to them and offering their condolences because people thought they actually died, which is kind of crazy to think about. They even had the movie's IMDb page list the actors as missing, presumed dead. The movie, as I've slightly touched on already, follows a couple film students going out to the woods to film a documentary about the legend of the Blair Witch, a mythical being that they don't actually believe exists. But as the group of students investigates further and further, things get stranger and more terrifying. It kind of leaves us with the question of if the Blair Witch is real, as it never really appears in the film itself. But as the film itself says, all of the characters are missing, presumed dead, and we see a lot of weird stuff throughout that can't really be explained, except for it having been the Blair Witch. So, the Blair Witch Project premieres in January of 1999 at the Sundance Film Festival and is released nationwide in July of that same year. And then, a few months later, in October of the same year, the Scooby-Doo Project was released. Originally, the 20 or so minute special wasn't released all at once. It was actually drip-fed to audiences in small increments during commercial breaks, during a huge Scooby-Doo marathon. So, as you were watching reruns of old Scooby-Doo episodes, as the commercials between portions of episodes were running, you'd get these small bits of Scooby and the gang investigating a monster in some local woods. There are a few things that make this such a strangely frightening experience. The main thing being that this isn't the normal Scooby-Doo experience. Much like the, at the time of this special, recently released and wild popular Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island, this special wasn't afraid to deviate away from the strictly comedy format the show was known for at that time, and lean into some more actual, genuine horror. Yes, there are some jokes here and there, but the overall feel of this special is wildly different. There's also the combination of different media styles that adds to the overall creepiness. Let's start with the obvious, the mixture of animation and live action. While the Scooby Gang themselves are animated as usual, they're imposed over live action footage. They're the only things that are animated in the entirety of the short. We see live action interviews, real locations, and even a genuine mystery machine. It's this combination itself that adds an unnerving feeling throughout the episode's entirety. This is something that Courage the Cowardly Dog does quite well. The mixing and matching of different art styles adds a feeling that something doesn't belong. Something isn't right. That's why so many of the villains in Courage are either stop motion or CGI or something weird. It's just plain creepy. If we add the found footage nature of the piece of media that they're parodying, it's a fantastic combination of techniques that I don't think I've seen before or since, really. This is actually about the same plot overall as the Blair Witch Project, even complete with the gang either dying or going missing at the end. The whole thing just kind of fades to black before fading back up with missing posters for the whole gang, which I was pretty young when I saw this and I remember it being terrifying. The whole special has never officially been released despite being generally well received and even winning an Annie Award. It was kind of released a few times on these best of DVD type things, but for the most part the only place you'll ever really be able to find it is right here on YouTube. Missing Sesame Street episode. Sesame Street is one of those shows that I think everyone has some kind of connection to in some way, shape, or form. The show's been on since the late 60s and has aired over 4,600 episodes at the time of writing this. It's not too surprising with a show that's been on for as long as this and has aired as many episodes as it has, that some of the earlier episodes may have sort of vanished, never to be seen again. Most of these episodes are, of course, from the first several seasons of the show and are, for the most part, pretty unremarkable. But as far as I've been able to find, there's only one episode that was actively pulled because episodes thought it was too disturbing for kids. So, full disclosure, this one is, I think, by far the least scariest of the three topics I'm touching on today, but it's also the one that I think had the biggest search for a specific episode. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's instead back up to 1976, February 10th. Sesame Street was airing its 7th season, and on this fateful day, Sesame Street had a special guest lined up, Margaret Hamilton, who, 30 years prior, had played the Wicked Witch in The Wizard of Oz. Quick tangent, it's kind of crazy to think about how old that movie actually is, right? Anyways, in the episode, the Wicked Witch loses her broom, which is found and kept by David, at least until the Wicked Witch decides to be respectful. Basically, the episode from here follows the Wicked Witch as she goes around kind of terrorizing the street. She threatens to turn Big Bird into a feather duster, which is probably one of the few death threats we've actually seen on the show. She makes it rain inside a store, after she leaves the store of course, and she gets Oscar the Grouch to fall in love with her. Eventually, the Wicked Witch tricks her broom back, flies off into the distance before losing her broom again while trying to do a sweet trick on her broom, which is also why I couldn't be a witch. I'd probably do the exact same thing. Anyways, after the episode aired and was shown in reruns a bit, outcry from parents caused Sesame Street to pull the episode entirely. Yeah, it's definitely a step down from the other episodes I'm talking about, but then again, this is a baby show for babies. So it kind of makes sense that an episode like this in a show like Sesame Street could be a bit overwhelming. I mean, we were still at a point where people weren't used to horror in the same way that many are today. We weren't that far out from people actually freaking out and fainting in their seats during the movie Psycho. I mean, the cops were called during a Psycho showing in New York. That's wild. But from this point, the episode just disappeared for over 40 years. If they were completely pulling the episode because it was too scary for kids, then it only makes sense that they wouldn't include it in any down-the-road best-of compilations or anything like that. And even then, we were still about a year away from VHSs being widely available in the US. That wouldn't even begin until 1977. This was also, obviously, decades before the internet, so there was no way for this strange bit of Sesame Street lore to be uploaded onto a website like YouTube. And thus, the episode was lost. It's still not even available on any streaming services. The episode was just gone. But of course, if people hear about something being banned for being too scary, they decide that's something they absolutely need to see. Every so often, really low quality grainy clips from the episode would be uploaded to YouTube, but that was it. Until just this year, when a much higher quality version was uploaded in its entirety. It turns out that all of the Sesame Street episodes were housed and kept in the Library of Congress. As a result of this foresight to actively protect and upkeep media, as well as all Sesame Street episodes being released to the American Archive of Public Broadcasting, someone was able to stream and record and upload the episode for everyone to see. But strangely, apparently you can't just stream stuff from the Library of Congress. There's some speculation that you could at one point, and someone took advantage of that to record a bunch of Sesame Street episodes. This could have also been part of a hack of some kind, or even that this was just a rogue copy of the episode that someone managed to come across. Either way, it's a rare piece of media that was once entirely lost, but now the masses can sit back and see what caused so much fear in the children of the 70s. X-Files. Home. Okay. Here we are, by far the most disturbing of the 3 episodes I'm talking about today. I mean, that definitely makes sense considering the other 2 I talked about were things created for children, and this is decidedly not. The X-Files isn't afraid to get creepy or scary or just a bit unnerving, but even amongst all of these episodes, Season 4, Episode 2, Home, stands out. And it's probably also going to be the reason this video gets demonetized. I mean, the episode begins with a child being buried alive and then the body being found by other children. It's pretty dark. The rest of the episode revolves around the investigation that reveals some super gross family relations with truly disturbing implications. You know what? They're not implications, they just kind of say what's going on. Anyways, 3 of the sons in the house die, and the eldest and the mother go off to start a new family. Gross. The episode was written to be as intentionally disturbing and shocking as possible. And hot dang, they really nailed it. This is the only episode in the entirety of The X-Files to have a TV MA rating, and it would have been the first episode to receive a viewer discretion warning for graphic content if that system had been in place. Coincidentally, that system would actually be put into place about 2 months later. On the surface level, it seems like this might have been a reaction to such a wildly disturbing episode, but in reality, that had been in the works since February of that year, 1996. And despite the shocking nature of the episode, it was generally pretty well received. Some people even claimed it was a fantastic return to what the show had been in the first 3 seasons of the show. But I mean, like, seasons 3 through 6 are all like the best seasons of the show, aren't they? And even through today, the episode is generally regarded as one of the best episodes of The X-Files. It's terrifying and fun and holds a special place in a lot of fans' hearts. But Fox wasn't too keen on keeping the episode in the general airing rotation. In fact, they had edits they wanted done even before the show aired. The baby was supposed to be crying and screaming in the beginning of the episode as it was buried. That was cut, for obvious reasons. It was getting a little too dark. They couldn't even get the version of Wonderful Wonderful they wanted to use because Johnny Mathis read the screenplay and was like, nah, I'm good. So going forward, Fox decided to never ever run a rerun of this episode, though the episode was eventually shown in syndication on other channels. And even today, a lot of people consider this to be one of the scariest episodes of mainstream TV you can watch on Halloween. And that's where I'll end the video for now. If you like this style of video, let me know down below. Follow me on Twitter at 10kbill to stay up to date on everything I'm working on. Support us on our Patreon if you like this content and want to see more like it. And of course, make sure you subscribe for all your entertainment related content.